We are joined on the phone today by Travis Franklin of the band Catbath. They just had a new album out. It's called Table Scraps. Hey, Travis, how you doing today?
I'm good.
Well, first, I appreciate you taking the time out with me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Well, if you can tell maybe the listeners a bit about Catbath, maybe if they haven't discovered you guys yet, can you tell them a little bit about the band?
Yeah, we've been together, since 2012, I think, or 2013, I guess, is when we actually started playing out. So, and to our name, we have 2 full lengths, and we just released our new EP, Table Scraps, and just finished a 14-song album in the studio that we are mixing right now. Sound-wise, it's kind of hard. It's an amalgamation of all the things that I enjoyed from the 90s and 80s as a kid, I guess.
Sure.
So if I had to compare us, like, influence-wise, I know, like, the Pixies and the Breeders come to mind. A little bit of, like, High on Fire or Sleep in there in some instances, and then a lot of, like, the 50s and 60s, like, doo-wop, the pop music, Beach Boys, that sort of thing. So, yeah, and we played all over. Obviously, this year has been kind of an exception. And have only ever had one lineup change in our, 9 years of being a band, which is pretty successful, I think. We
Definitely.
did add a member. Yeah, I don't know. That's really about it. Like, we're on all the socials, I believe. So, yeah.
Well, I know I first saw you guys open for Shonen Knife a few years back. And
Yeah.
I had no idea who you guys were. I remember sitting there thinking, all right, I want to see Shonen Knife. Let's, get these opening bands out of here. And then you guys hit the stage. I think you opened with Law of Average. And, I was just blown away. I was like, who are these guys?
Yeah, that was such a surreal experience. Like, Shonen Knife is one of those bands that I, kind of grew up on, you know what I mean? Like, coming out of the whole 90s scene, like, Nirvana was obviously a huge influence on everybody in the band, at least in our generation, and they used to always champion Shonen Knife, so by proxy, like, you start off loving that stuff and then finding all the other things that they were influenced by, and Shonen Knife was one of those bands that just, blew me away, and I loved them. And so when we had the opportunity to actually open for them, I was like, what? It was sort of like one of my rock star, oh my God, was kind of a little giddy about it and pretty nervous about the show. But the show was awesome. It's one of the best turf shows I think I've ever played. So it's great.
Well, and I've been a big fan of yours since I saw you guys on that show. And, you mentioned, all the different influences, and you definitely can hear a lot of that stuff, that you mentioned the Pixies. I kind of hear, some Sabbath, maybe Soundgarden in there as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the harmonies you guys pull off is amazing, especially, you're able to do that live as well. Can you talk a bit about that kind of, is that just your influences, or is that everyone in the band kind of bringing all that stuff together?
It's everybody in the band. I think I know when Crystal, our drummer, when her and I sort of started the band, we talked about it, and harmonies were always something that was really important to us in music. And it was important for me to be able to pull it off live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was how do we do this successfully to be able to just make it work, through sound systems and practicing and stuff. And it was always okay, the music's the first thing, right? You come up with the sort of arrangement and the melody and sort of, but to have that, harmonies were always just part of that, the skeletal structure of everything from just the writing process as a band in general. So it was something that it's kind of a blessing and a curse because it's I love it. I love harmonies. I love bands that do harmonies. I grew up on a lot of the 60s, Beach Boys, Beatles, that sort of thing. And so it's it was always important to me. And Crystal was the same thing. She was the Crystals or the Ronettes or something like that. So it's I love all of that stuff, but it's how do you put that into a rock band format? And then as we did it, it just worked, I was just oh, this is actually really cool. Like it's nothing like 3-part like doo-wop harmonies in a stoner metal song or something. It's sort of a surreal experience, but it worked, and it's something that we'll always do for as long as we're a band. And a lot of it is like from a natural standpoint. It's like I'll write like a melody for a song, like I'll write a riff or whatever and come up with a melody, and then I'll bring it to the band and we sort of put it together like structure wise. And then Crystal and everybody else, you know, like Danielle, our new bass player, but Kristen, our former bass player, we would come up with like, you know, ideas for like a backup vocals, or like, oh, what if we did this and had like a 3-part harmony there and just on that, you know, those 2 notes or something. And it's like, yeah, so it becomes like more of a band effort. It's always cool to write like your little bedroom demos and have them kind of turn into these like cool pop songs with an aggressive edge, I guess.
And you mentioned the new EP out now, Table Scraps.
Mm-hmm.
When a lot of bands are released these sorts of, you know, odds and ends kind of albums, usually you can expect a lot of, you know, throwaway tracks maybe. But, you know, I was surprised a lot of these songs didn't make it onto to your other albums. I mean, it all sounds great.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. That means a lot. Thank you, Dustin. Yeah, I think a lot of it was the fact that, like, well, for Glitterbox especially, our second record we were doing on vinyl, so we kind of had like a truncated track listing. Like, there's just only so much that you can put on a record when you have like a modern day like sort of bass response and mixing. I know this is very technical and boring, but it's like that's so. A lot of those songs were just like we had all these great songs, and we're like, well, what do we do with these? Because we can't really we can't include them on the record. So we thought, well, maybe we'll do a digital download or something that has like extension, you know, like, oh, you get an extra track. But we just decided instead we just release it as is and then accumulate what we had, like, and release something later on down the line. And so, like, everything, and Table Scraps is obviously a kind of a ridiculous name, but it's very apt because they are all just like pulled from different times throughout the band's history in life. You know, some of it was B-sides from the first album, Bath Time, and some of it from Glitterbox, and some of it was just stuff that we did. We did like a singles thing for the record, Minneapolis-based record label Guilt Ridden Pop, and there were a couple of songs that didn't get used on that ended up being on Table Scraps. So, yeah, I don't know. It's. I'm glad you guys. I'm glad especially that you enjoy it, Dustin. That's awesome. It's some of my favorite songs are actually on there in a weird way because some of the stuff that I really liked, it didn't fit with like the motif or whatever what we were going for the record. But I was like, man, like I found it on the computer, like sort of stashed in a folder when we were like our bass player, Kristen, she left. Oh God, I want to say it was last November, just before the pandemic hit. 2 babies, you know, doing the family life thing, and I completely 100% like, you know, was all for it. So she was just like, just didn't have time. So when we got our new bass player, Danielle, who's in like Bruised Violet, and she's in a million local bands that are amazing, was going through all the tracks and just sort of like sending her all the stuff so she could kind of practice the stuff at home. And I found that B-sides folder and I was like, we really should release these. And it just took that long to get there.
Well, I'm glad the stuff is out there now. And, you know, you mentioned this is kind of, you know, maybe like an end of a chapter for Catbath with Kristen leaving and now Danielle's in the group. How has that been for you guys and, you know, as a songwriter and just kind of getting it all to gel, I guess? Because I imagine it must have been tough to just find somebody who can, you know, pull off the harmonies and the stuff you guys do in the old songs.
Yeah, it really was like a pretty surreal experience. And the funny thing is I mean, Danielle's a phenomenal musician. Like the Bruised Violet, she does, you know, 3-part harmony. She's the drummer for the band Scrunchies, if you're familiar with them at all. So they do a little bit of like 2-part harmony. And the biggest change, I think, between Danielle and Kristen is that Danielle is like a screamer. It's like she's a better screamer than I am. You know, so it's like I'm like, oh wow. So like that utilized like in the newer stuff. Obviously, nobody's heard it yet, but we've got a new record that we just recorded. I sort of mentioned it, but some of the stuff took a much more harder edge than I think we maybe would have went in the past, just because we had the potential to do that instead of having me trying to scream like 4 minutes straight and see how well my throat holds up then for the harmonies later on. It's nice to have like sort of like somebody that kind of comes in and picks up the slack. And Crystal's like always been Crystal has a really good rock and roll voice, So with the new stuff, and it's funny because she joined, we practiced a bunch of the old stuff and sort of got it up and going, but then the pandemic hit and we were just like, well, we don't know when it'll end, like at first, like everybody, we took a couple, like probably 3 weeks off, and just because nobody knew anything, like with the whole like world at the time, like the pandemic, nobody knew how it spread. It was kind of like a sort of weird panic.
Sure.
But then, like, as we discussed it as a band and decided, no, it's cool, we'll just go in, we'll do the safety precautions, the 6-foot distancing thing, and kind of progressed. It just started writing. And so, like, Danielle's been a very integral part of, like, the writing process. And like I said, like, the way that Catbath kind of works is that I'll, like, sit in my bedroom and just be like, oh, here's this riff, or a couple of riffs put together, and it's like, well, that could be a song, and then I'll bring it in and just be like, hey, I've got these different riffs. What do we want to play? And we kind of go as a band, you know what I mean? And Danielle has just sort of like, I mean, she's just picked it up like, I don't know, like a genius, really. So it's been really easy. And I feel extremely fortunate for that, because every other band I've been in, if you lose a member or you gain a member, there's like this growing pain. It's a process of like trying to learn people and how they work,
Sure.
And Danielle was just a very natural fit. So, yeah.
Well, when's the new album going to be out? Do you have any idea? Maybe this year? Or?
I'm hoping this year. I like talking with everybody about it. We have it recorded. We still have to master and mix and master it. And we figure out like I think we're going to actually try and like shop it to like labels or something to just see if we can get like a vinyl press or something. We'll do something on that. I'm hoping by the end of the summer, but that's probably being very optimistic considering that we don't have any plan for like the pandemic ending. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to like release the record without actually like being able to promote it.
Sure.
So it's sort of in limbo at the moment, but I see good news on the vaccine fronts, and eventually I would like to think by late this year we can look forward to having a new record.
Awesome. Well, it would be great to see you guys out playing shows again. Would you consider making your way down south here to Mankato? Would that be too far for you guys? Or
nope, we'll absolutely come down to Mankato. Yeah, we would love to. We've played in various places around Minnesota. It's funny because like we've toured all over the place, but like Minnesota, like in the greater Minnesota area, has been very quiet for us. I think we played in Winona a couple times because we got some friends down there. And I want to say we played in Duluth once, many, many years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, like no, like, and you think like it is St. Cloud and Mankato and Rochester, all the other cities, like we just have never been to. So we would love to come down. Sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, I don't have any, insider's deal or anything, but, maybe we can get something worked out. That'd be great to see you guys down here.
I would love it. We'll keep in contact for sure.
Well, I know the Table Scraps just out and the new album in the works. Is there anything else maybe we should be watching out for, or something else coming up?
Well, I know we had a video that released with Table Scraps. Our friend, our lead guitar player, Gravy, actually did the video. I guess he just did it with some stock footage. It's like ridiculous video, and it's great. I'm hoping that we'll be doing another video sometime in the summer for one of the newer songs. It might be kind of a teaser, a little taste of something that we release. I can't confirm, because things can change in a hurry, especially with the whole pandemic thing going on. But There are other things in the works for sure, but right now just mostly concentrating on getting that new record and hopefully being able to play live shows again. I'm going to be so nervous. I get nervous playing live anyway, even though I've done it since I was probably 17. And now that we haven't played a live show and it's been about a year and a half, so I'm just oh man, it's going to be like when I was 17 getting up in front of the VFW. So.
Awesome. Travis, again, thank you so much for your time. We're big fans of yours, and we play Catbath all the time here on the show, so definitely looking forward to seeing you guys down here soon.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, and I'll be in touch, and maybe we can get something worked out here if things get back to normal.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You got our email and my phone number.
All right, there you go. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, that was Travis Franklin from the band Catbath, and their new album, Table Scraps, is available now. You can find that on their Bandcamp page, and they got the new album coming up hopefully later this year as well.